All right, you schmucks, listen up. I'm absolutely fizzing about this one. The Old King's Crown is a phenomenal board game that absolutely deserves your attention. This is the type of rare box that's able to induce that kind of bounding enthusiasm, the excitement that gets you daydreaming about when you're next gonna get it to the table, that promise that sends a little shiver through you as each rule rattles rich with possibility. And not just the rules, but the presentation too. This thing is lacquered in so much phenomenal artwork that it makes you question what you've spent your whole life doing. This is monk-grade labor, by which I mean it's the consistency and quality of work that only happens when your days consist of either working or praying, and the big man upstairs hasn't gotten back to you just yet. Shut Up and Sit Down categorically recommends The Old King's Crown. I think I will be hard-pressed to find a game that excites me more in 2025, and if I do, I will eat this hat. And it's a big old hat.
And I like it too.
Oh yeah, Matt likes it too. The Old King's Crown has you and your friends take the role of asymmetric factions vying for control of a kingdom that has lost its king.
Sad state of affairs. We used to be a proper country.
What happened to him? It does not matter. You're just after his hat and his chair. Over the course of 5 rounds, you're going to individually plot to seize the reins, like the reins on a horse, but with a G, so it's a joke. It's a joke. Now, primarily, you'll win the game by winning clashes, these 3 fights that happen in these 3 regions every single round. And each clash is resolved by everyone playing a card face down into all 3 regions, and then revealing the results one by one. And the highest single number in each region wins. Winning a clash will get you the printed reward, most often including an influence. And whoever has the most influence at the game's end is the winner. Oh sure, it's all just that simple. It's simple as pie, is it, Tom? This is that easy, you clown? Well, yeah, kind of. So right up here, front and center, we have the core contradiction of the Old King's Crown. This game is simultaneously the biggest and smallest game that's out there right now. Let me explain. The Old King's Crown took 7 years to make, but miraculously, those 7 years don't manifest as bloat, but instead a refinement of the systems and a decadence in the presentation. And that is highlighted perfectly by this manual. It's a whopping 50 pages long. And initially, that really scared me. Has this thing been boiling so long that it's turned soupy and stodgy and gloopy like a big sad Sunday stew? No, not at all. These pages evaporate when you realize that they're just coated in lavishly detailed examples and gorgeous illustrations. And the goal of the game is mostly to just have a higher number on your card than your opponent has on their card. It's basically tarot-sized top trumps. What I'm getting at here is that, for me at least, there was a certain expectation going into this game. Because of its many dozens of gorgeously illustrated components, because of its big old box, because of its big old manual, I just thought that this game was going to be eccentric or avant-garde, a strange step sideways that was gonna scrumble up the status quo. But it's not that. I mean, at least not really. To use the parlance of the developer's local Scotland, the Old King's Crown is just a wee guy. Despite its tremendous bulk, the Old King's Crown has the sharpened soul of a small box card game. And I categorically do not mean that as an insult against this game. This is a rich, detailed, and layered version of those same small box experiences. It is the tippity top of what those kind of systems could possibly deliver. But because of all of that richness and detail and layering, it's not just small. It's also huge. No, scratch that. It's bigger than huge. It's large. Card abilities, one-off powers, a council you can sit on, a market of unique abilities to bid for, a bluffing mechanic, a personal shop of special cards, a reverse deck building attrition mechanic, location-specific powers, an absolutely stunning range of card abilities, and iconography. This game is stuffed to the gills with things to do, with rules to learn. That card game core is wreathed in so much particular and intricate mechanical detail. This takes half an hour to learn, it takes multiple hours to play, and it takes many, many hours to get any kind of confidence that anything you're doing competitively is any good at all. This is the kind of game where you tinker with a precise engine, where a decision made 2 turns prior in error rattles through your game state like a stray elbow whacked on a particularly angular bit of furniture. But it's also a game where a 10 beats a 4, where you collect victory points to win, and where a particularly canny bluff could have you going home with the whole damn lasagna. The purpose of all this pretty lengthy preamble is just that I really want to set some expectations as to who exactly this is for and what exactly it is. I just want to give you a sense of the game feel here, because this looks like a board game-ass board game. It looks like a people on a map area control type deal that you've played dozens of times before. And it's not that, not at all, except it also is like a little bit. But it's far more sly than it is bombastic. This game is bluffing, it's deduction, it's very particular hand management. There's no dice, but there are plenty of gambles on exactly what someone is holding. And there's also crunchy engines to build, asymmetries to navigate, and a whole system that players are quite nervous of touching on their first few games. I'm still a bit wary of it myself. All of this is just to say there is a lot going on, and it is an odd game to cover. Now, my group absolutely adored this thing. They loved it immediately, but I've heard many other groups bouncing quite hard off of it, and I think some of that is to do with approach. You need to pick up what they're putting down here. You need to take the big with the small, the particular and precise with the gung-ho spirit of, you know what, let's just see what happens. And if you do, if you can get into that headspace, well, there's nothing else quite like it. All right, enough preamble. How does this thing actually play? 1 to 4 players will play 4 to 6 rounds in which they will fight for these influence tokens, with the person hoarding the most at the end of your predetermined game length being the new monarch of this crumbling land. And the board has an almost flowchart-like procession to it that meanders through the seasons, from spring at the top all the way down to winter at the bottom, where it belongs. Summer is where we're going to focus first, though, because it's the core around which everything else orbits, the yolk of our game egg. This is the part where everyone seeds the board with face-down cards and then flips them simultaneously to do a big honkin' fight in each of these 3 regions. The highest number is going to win, but before you go claiming victory, you have to resolve the abilities on each card. Now don't worry, there is only a small selection to choose from. Ambushes will let you play surprise extra cards from your hand. Flanks will let you shimmy into unresolved regions. Retreats let you beat a hasty escape when things are going south. And most excitingly of all, deadly cards will eliminate other players, sending their cards into the lost pile, a sickly communal bin full of mistakes. Oh, and before these cards are even plopped on the table, players might tip their hand as to where their interest is centered by using these chunky herald and supporter pieces. Supporters will simply add extra strength into a region to boost up your card power, but heralds are a bit funkier. They don't give you any special powers, but they will give you an extra influence, an extra point, if you win the region in which they are placed. And they also have a second, sneakier ability. If you win the region where your herald is, you also get to steal an influence from every other player that also has their herald there. If you win. If if you win. Now this combo of card, herald, and supporter immediately creates a huge amount of game, with plenty of room for little pointy bluffs and misdirection here and there, as well as just swaggering bravado where you thump your herald right down next to someone and tell them it's on. The thing is, where you might potentially conceptually win is just as important as the winning itself, because each of these different locations does something completely different. If you win at these lower spaces, they'll let you do tricky things with your discard pile, cycling cards back into your hand or rejigging your deck. The middle spaces will get you an extra influence or this King's Favor token that gives you a unique player power. The Wilderness lets you journey, bidding a card to obtain a currency used to buy newer and more powerful and shiny cards for your deck. And the castle will let you govern, installing one of your cards into a council that can be cashed in for rewards later down the line. Now already that's quite a lot of rules, and laid out like this, it seems quite abstract. But when they click together, it feels like someone is massaging the inside of my brain with a hammer, in a good way. Sickos, listen up. Your time is now, because in this game, you can pull some naughty tactics. This is the kind of game where you soul read a flanking opponent and cut off their exit with a waiting assassin. It's the kind of game where you go all in on one region only to cackle mischievously as you whisk away your forces using your trademark hey boy, and your eager opponents ping into each other head first. It's devilish, but it doesn't come out of nowhere, because every player starts the game with an identical set of cards, and discards are public information. And as well as this, so much of the game revolves around taking cards back from your discard pile or fishing things out of the bin. Hell, every player starts the game with an heir in their hand, a powerful totem that constantly returns to their hand after being played, unless someone were to deal with it. Now I'd be lying if I said that this game is 100% readable. There are still plenty of unknowns flying around. But what can't be actively deduced can still be predicted if you read your friends well enough. Now they've put their herald here, so they're gonna play something strong. And out of the cards I know they have in their hand, it's either an 8 or it's a 10. And they're both pretty juicy targets to deal with. Now, if you've played board games for any length of time, you can probably see why this is a compelling core. You're blind bidding for control of these regions, you're scrying for tells in the plays of your opponents, you're snatching something out from right under someone when they thought they had it in the bag. This stuff is as good as it's ever been. It's crisp, it's clear, it's fun, it's a good old time. And all of this is nice, but nice isn't enough. If you're like me, you're asking one big question. Thomas, if this game really is so small and simple, then why is all this board happening? What are these little cards on the edges of B-roll shots? You told me this was an asymmetric game, and yet all your cards are identical. Where's that stuff hiding? Is it under here? Well, fret ye not, because this game is a sandwich. Yes, a BLT. Yes, indeed. A big, good board game. So the filling of the sandwich is how you describe it to people. It's what you're there for. And make no mistake, the clashes of the Old King's Crown are a scrumptious filling. But the bread that surrounds the filling, that is just as important. And the Old King's Crown's bread is not a sad sarny slab. It's a crusty bloomer, a sourdough superstar, a dangerously doughy delight. Games of the Old King's Crown aren't just played in these clashes, of course. That is just summer in the middle. And so before you get to this point, you'll get to do a bit of spring, and afterwards, a little bit of autumn. And yes, I suppose, winter, but that's just an upkeep phase. Autumn happens just after the clash and has you survey the wreckage and make a game plan for the next round. You can journey and govern like before, nabbing new cards or installing them into councils for little bonuses. You also get to take any autumn actions that you might have access to, like deploying cards to the board, seeding the stage for next round, or rallying certain cards back into your hand to fight again, like your heir. And in spring, you're doing something completely different, bidding for these kingdom cards. Each of these will grant you a game-breaking special ability, and are maybe the most wild part of the base game. 4 will get laid out in a little market row, and each player bids for what they want using cards from their hand. And the highest strength card will get first pick of the line. Nice, you got what you want, but the card you used to bid now must occupy your prize, slotting into your player board like so. You got the card that you want, but now the card you used to bid for it won't be able to take part in clashes. Sorry lads, I'm busy holding this ring, or out getting pints with the emboldened brigands. What are they like? I'd love to get pints with the emboldened brigands. I think they would warm to me and all of my skills. So that trade-off, powerful card for powerful power, that is tricky enough as is. But there is a further twist to the tale, because in later rounds, players can instead use their bid to steal other players' kingdom cards. And here, whoever you'd slotted into your board to snag the card in the first place is now used as a defense against those trying to yank it away from you. Ooh, what a lovely stack of decisions. You're bidding both for how much you want something now and in the future. You're breathing a sigh of relief as potential cards that could steal your prize slide off into the discard pile. You're feeling extra cheeky when the tentpole of someone's strategy is supported by the countryside reservists and you just bap, 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 bap. And yes, these single cards with their 2 or 3 lines of text, they really can be the backbone of your plans. Some are just bluntly very good, but some will crack the game wide open, right down the spine. This severe-looking innkeeper absolutely loves to drop a few eaves. Clumsy boy. They'll let you take sly peeks at your opponent's face-down cards in regions, and then just gently shuffle yours around. Nice. The Smuggler's Pass is perennially available for a sneaky retreat should things heat up a little bit too much, and the Great Wing gives your heir the chance to gallivant around the board as they please. If you're anything like me, your heir will be gallivanting headfirst into a wall. I especially love this tournament card that everyone has to contribute a champion towards. And sure, it confers a nice bonus if you win, but it's also a wonderful information gathering tool. Who didn't show up to the fight? And why? So these kingdom cards are wicked. They're spicy little knots of power that you're gonna squabble over, but they are not the only source of asymmetry. You see, these kingdom cards often tango with the tactics you have at your disposal, these 4 unique single-use powers at the bottom of your player board. Even on their own, these tactics do a lot to shape how a single faction plays. The clans, for example, have access to sea lanes to let them zip around the board as they please, or the Gathering, the cult over here, they can bring back the dead, which is nothing to worry about, I'm sure. And as well as these, each player has a miniature stack of asymmetric cards that they can gain access to across a game. And these cards are frankly a bit messed up. Oh look, here's a card that makes basically everyone from the clans as tough as old boots. What about a Gathering card that completely inverts the clashes, having the feeblest, meekest, saddest little sucker at the table taking the win? What about this big pile of bombs that the Uprising has? It's a card which explodes bigly. But the juice is not any of these individual ingredients alone. It's how they combine together into a sickly regal smoothie. Combining these elements is where the secret sauce of the Old King's Crown really starts to kick in, where on-the-fly builds start to emerge, where the asymmetry really gets its hooks into you. The nobility's martial law tactic is scary enough as it is, locking down a region for a whole round with your giant off cannon. But why not keep it that way by hiring a particularly persistent siege commander or have your most cold-hearted advisors spin up an artillery workshop? Why leave anything to chance? Just stay cooped up in your castle behind your bristling wall of industrial artillery. You are safe inside, bouncing off the same location reward over and over and over again. Like you've broken the pinball machine, it's spilling out tickets, and the staff at the arcade are starting to get worried that you're going to go home with their entire stock of gel pens and gooey aliens. Combine our keen-eared innkeeper with the splendid guard for an absolutely sickly uprising combo that has you able to look at every single card on the board. You're a full football field ahead of the competition and you're eating their conceptual lunch. They've not even buttered the bread before you've got a mouth that's crammed full of their victory points. The clans are able to plate themselves in thick layers of armor that make them into an impossible coconut to crack, and the gathering will begin to create the kind of laissez-faire attitude towards death that hasn't been peeped since the Aztecs. Rack up the altar, lads. All this blood's got to be good for something. There's so much scope in these systems to build truly noxious combinations that never fail to feel particularly of one certain faction. You'll take their simple kit and shake it out into this spidery, horrible thing that has everyone round the table grimacing and then laughing and then grimacing again, because you've just done something preposterously mean and you're probably going to do it again. But look, I might be drifting away a little bit here, because whilst, yes, the Old King's Crown is stuffed with all of this crazy, whip-smart detail for the people who are reaching for it, it's also the kind of game that can be unwound with a clever read on a particular player or a sly bluff in a certain location. It marries these two halves effortlessly, the nerdy, tinkering, build-crafting, theoretical side smushing directly into the nauseatingly tense card flips and napkin maths of a much smaller box. And it all points towards these tense, diverse, funny games. Aha, says our first player, you've sprung my naughty little trap. But then, aha, the second player brandishes an even bigger knife with which to stab you. But then, out of nowhere, it is just cracking. If it wasn't blindingly obvious by now, I just think that this game is tremendously fun. I can overanalyze and ramble and unpick and gesticulate all that I want, but at the end of the day, this is the kind of game that I just adore playing over and over and over again. And I think maybe my only problem with the Old King's Crown is some woolliness around the way that certain rules are worded, which is to be expected in a game of this size and complexity. Actions on cards can only be used once per round, except if they're on big cards. Then they're called commands and you can use them multiple times, but flank is the only one that this really applies to. There is an odd flow to the teach as well, hitching on awkward rules like what happens when you tie, or the specific simultaneous eliminations caused by deadly cards, or what information exactly should not just be public, but announced. All of this does lead to some slightly fussy first few games, where people are anticipating that they can do something and then they just can't. Or maybe they weren't aware that certain outcomes were possible, which is very frustrating in a game that has a lot of hidden information. And to clarify, I don't think that this is ever too much, and the manual does a fabulous job of explaining everything. It's just that I want to emphasize that the game is detailed and weird by nature. There's going to be some knots and some stumbling blocks here and there. But I will concede that it is a little bit different in something as competitive and cutthroat as this game is. For most players, just a touch of clarity is needed. And I don't want to mislead people with this whole big and small game situation. This has its fair share of fiddle. Luckily, the designer is monstrously active in replying to folks on BoardGameGeek with elaborate examples to glean bundles of information from. And I'm big enough to admit that I was in a privileged position for this one. I had Mr. Pablo on speed dial for the whole review process and had the answers for 3 rules questions given to me straight from the source. And so it's only fair that I share that privilege with you as well. There's so much more that I could go into detail with here, like how turn order is monstrously important in this game and keeps the race close from start to finish. The way that the 5-round structure gives this game a perfectly pitched arc, with the final round having attrition bite at your heels. With your reserves running low and your options narrowing, it always boils down to one clutch play to cement the game. I love the heralds that give the player furthest behind on points the opportunity to till their own field or gamble on a heist of the century. There is so much to love, but I will not dwell, because if I'm left to talk about the nooks and crannies of this game, I will do exactly that forever. And I did do that in a bonus video that you can watch by supporting Shut Up and Sit Down. If you donate to the channel via our website or our Patreon, then you get access to all of our bonus videos. And this month, that includes a little look at the Old King's Crown's weird expansion, the Wild Kingdom. This video is a bit of a review / first impressions of all the weird stuff that's going on in that box, as well as a few leftover thoughts that I had after making the big old video that you're watching now. If you like what we do, or if we've guided you towards a few great games over the years, then please do consider supporting the channel. It means that we are able to do what we do. It means the video that you're watching right now gets to exist. Thanks very much. If you support us, please do consider it. And now I'm going to do a beautiful, seamless transition back to the... And look, instead of rambling endlessly about all of the weird strategic details that are present in the Old King's Crown, in a way that will probably only make sense to people who've played a whole bunch of the game, I will instead close out this review by talking about the presentation of this thing. Because look at it. This game is beyond stunning. The amount of incredible, gorgeous illustration packed into this box is faintly terrifying. Not only does every faction have its own set of unique characters to peruse between backstabbing sessions, but every single one of these market cards is also beautifully adorned, and it is not a slim stack. The pile of asymmetric cards that each player has access to will also sit on top of its own piece of art, a piece of art that's hidden away for most of the game by the cards. And the illustration has a fabulous tone to it as well, adorned in rich details, swinging wildly from the deeply sinister to the joyous and playful. Not a single person who I have played this game with has gone without commenting on the art. It is simply too spectacular to ignore. And at the foot of each card, there are these snippets of text written in this impressionistic style. The game as a whole actually does well to avoid these big chunks of narrative exposition text, instead offering you these peeks into the world beyond what you see on these cards, letting your imagination roam free and fill in the gaps. Together, it paints a world, this achingly beautiful clash of hope and decay, a gilded ruin. The breeze runs through it. Whew! Amazing. The designer is evidently very lucky. They should really thank their artist for bringing their game to life. I'm gonna be sick. The designer and the artist being the same person is distressing. It's terrifying because the quality of both parts of the work is just phenomenal. How do you do that? But it also makes so much sense as to how the game has ended up feeling as intentional as it does. Each faction's identity is reflected flawlessly in its artwork, in ways that accentuates their asymmetry in immediate and intuitive ways. Each set of art for each faction fits. The nobility's royal blues and weighted regalia reeks of an invisible power that moves only in dimly lit halls. And the darker, velveteen plumage of the gathering winks at secrets only visible under a crack of moonlight. The full bloom of sky and sea froths vigorously around the momentum of the clans. But smarter still are the ways in which tangible strategy considerations are reflected in the artwork of the cards that each player starts the game with. There's symmetry to the artwork in each of these decks, with each numbered card showing you that particular faction's version of a thing. But it's where they differ within these roles that is simply wicked. The nobility is a faction of staunch rule. Vice-like grips on territory are solidified via their rigorous use of the deploy keyword, the one that lets you field your cards a little bit earlier. And so it figures then that their love affair with deploy is reflected in their starting deploy card, this mile-high cannon/wall called Whoa. Whoever named it well. Whoa! Am I right? On the other hand, the Uprising could not give a single toot about deploy. They're far more interested in the deadly keyword. And so it figures then that their deploy card, it's the idea of a big cannon. It's the thought of something that you could one day use, maybe, if we had the means. It's this kind of detail that brings this game from merely excellent to truly one-of-a-kind special. This is a box oozing with character, a design that begs to be explored, pored over, kept close. This is not a game that is just pretty for the sake of being pretty. It's more than ornamental. It is essential. Because the love put into the illustration, the cohesiveness of it all in tandem with the design, the detail and the space left for the imagination to wander, the care that has been put into every single inch suggests a game with ambitions of timelessness, a game that knows that its players will engage with it thoroughly. It is all just so considered. This is not a game that has been made with haste. The detail and the craftsmanship in the art means that it continues to give to the player in much the same way as the design itself. It rewards close reading. It loves when you come back for more in both its presentation and its play. This is a game that will never leave my collection, and it seems quite happy to stay. Okay, if you have watched this far into the video, firstly, thank you, love you, but also you're probably interested in the practical stuff, the grit of it all. First up on our gritty docket, we have player count, because this game varies wildly between its listed player counts of between 1 and 4 people. 4 players is a long evening. It's the game at its weirdest and its wildest, and it is also the player count that requires you to roll with it the most. You might throw everything you have into a conflict only to get absolutely stepped on by another player. There is a dizzying amount of hidden but trackable information in this one, making it the headiest head count, the maddest possible evening that you can have with this box. And 4 players? It might be my least favorite player count. Don't get me wrong, I still love the Old King's Crown at its full cohort of 4, but I love it even more at 2 or ideally 3 players. 2 players is a brutal staring contest, an absolutely excruciating game of cat and cat. It's 2 cats, they've both been trapped inside a cardboard box, they both have knives, and they hate each other. I ended up loving my 2-player games of the Old King's Crown far more than I expected that I would. They are surprisingly snappy and let you really savor the absolutely bastard moves that the person opposite you is making. I do highly recommend it at 2. 3 players? Whoa mama! For my money, this is where the Old King's Crown is at its very best. At this count, the game is packed with all that thematic richness and is played atop a spiderweb of intrigue. But it's still very trackable and it's still very knowable. You get all of that noodly detail without getting completely lost in the source. And 2 and 3 players both mean that you have quite a variety in your games. When only some of the pieces of the puzzle are present, you get more specific and interesting matchups. Showdowns between the nobility and the uprising feel completely different to games featuring the gathering and the clans. These factions are sufficiently defined that their absence feels almost as impactful as their presence. Also, I can actually vouch for the solo mode in this one, which is weird because we don't usually cover solo modes for games, and if we do, it's usually because they're dinky little play-in-bed crossword style affairs like Railroad Inc., for example. This one, you can't play it in bed. I tried. Oh, no. But I made the mistake of taking a little peek at the solo stuff in this game, and then finding myself worryingly compelled. The solo mode for the Old King's Crown has an entirely automated opponent, the Simulacrum, to fight against, and they're a delight to spar with. The rules overhead isn't too baggy, and it's a nicely pitched challenge that's a comfortable step sideways to the base game. Essentially, they are a stronger and weirder human opponent with a bunch of special rules that unstick the game around its edges. And in order to beat them, you often have to play smart and sly, finding sneaky ways to eke out wins around the edges of their big, powerful cards. And that's all I would say here, if not for the absolutely terrifying amount of malleability baked into this particular pie. Because once you're done with your game against the simulacrum, you can take them to the forge, which is essentially a tricksy set of ways to tweak your opponent, gradually escalating their difficulty with a heat system that is stripped right from Hades' playbook. It's wild. And finally, I have some advice for the potential purchaser. This is a game that rewards repeat play. It rewards mastery. It's not the kind of box that you randomly foist upon your friends at game night. This is a game that wants to be played a lot. It's a game that you sink into with regulars. I'm not saying that you can't play the Old King's Crown as a one-off experience, I'm just saying that it's better with time, with more plays under your belt. But yes, get your group together, even if that group is just one person, before you take the plunge, because this game is a whole lot better if people are following you into it. And finally, I will briefly mention the expansion. The full review for this will be over on our Patreon, but if you are curious, the Wild Kingdom is a wonderful bit of weirdo design that stretches this game to its absolute limit. Every oddball fringe idea finds a home in this box, and it's horrible. In a good way. It's weird and nasty. In a good way. The expansion is essentially a whole bunch of modules that range from tiny tweaks to massive shifts to everything you held dear. You can gently introduce them to the ecosystem of your game, or you can just dump them all in at once, like you are feeding a bucket of chum to a horde of hungry piranhas. It's weird and it's wild, hence the name, and I really like it. But I am, of course, a sicko for this game. It's not the kind of expansion that is a necessary day one purchase, but it is a great addition for if you get really stuck into this thing. And that, at last, is it. Goodness me. Thank you so much for watching to the end of this ridiculously big review. I'll be back next time for another review of another game that is just as big and just as weird. Very exciting. See you next time. Bye.